Pregame.com.
TCU at Boise State. Line opened Boise State 13.58. Now odds high is 15.58.5. This one's Brian's best bet. Tell me who I'm betting.
Tell you who you're betting?
Who I'm going to bet and why.
Well, that doesn't help us at all. You're supposed to argue with me. I think that's what
I have a strong lean for this game.
All right. Well, I'm going to take the points with TCU in this game.
Ooh, and we don't tell each other before going on. We don't want to know.
This is the first time that TCU's been a road underdog all season long. They haven't been a road dog since 2009. If you remember, that was when they went to Clemson, and they win that game straight up as a road underdog at Clemson. In fact, they're 22-5 straight up on the road in conference play. If you remember, out of the last 3 years, 2 of the games they went to bowl games was against Boise. They ended up splitting those games against Boise, and the winner of that game only outscored the opposition by 7 or less in both games. They're 7-2 against ranked teams straight up the last 3 years. And this Boise team is just not the same Boise team as they've had in the past. We've always talked about how strong the Boise home field is. In fact, coming into this year, the last 11 years, 41-22 against the spread at home. This year, 0-3 against the spread. The Lions maker hasn't caught up to the demise of Boise State. I hate to say demise, but they're just not as strong. And because they haven't played anybody really since Georgia, it's a situation where the public's been slow to recognize it because they continue to win. They're just not covering the spreads. And if you take a look at the last 4 weeks, it's a step-up situation for Boise State. They played UNLV, Air Force, Colorado State, and Fresno State.
World beaters.
Big step up here. And if you remember, they didn't really do well in any of those games. And a real telling point for me was earlier in the season, they played Nevada. Last year, Boise lost 1 game. That was to Nevada. In this game, Boise was given 27 points against Nevada this year. Their biggest game, big rivalry game, big game that they needed to come back off of losing to them last year. They only won by 20. They failed to cover by 7 points. Talking about an overrated team, and I hate to say this because I like to see the teams from the smaller conferences play. Sure. Boise's just not that good this year.
No, and the one thing is this. I thought coming into the season that the odds makers were going to inflate Boise so high, and they weren't in that same team, that you were going to have a tough time making any money back in them. And, I mean, let's tell it like it is. The books are pretty happy that Boise's 4-4 against the spread. Right. That's a winner for them. You know, this team usually hurts them. Year in and year out, Boise hurts the books. So at 4-4 ATS, they couldn't be happier. Right. I'm afraid of this. This is why I lean TCU. I really like the total, but here's why I lean TCU. I think the Boise stock has dropped. Before the season started, Golden Nugget had this game 14.5, Boise State. The Hilton last week had Boise State as high as 17. Now all of a sudden, we saw Boise have problems with UNLV, and they bring out the line 13. I think that's an adjustment. On the flip side, though, TCU was also caught looking ahead against Wyoming. Right. You know, both these teams come in not playing their best ball in their last game against very weak opposition. But you give them a pass because you say they were looking ahead. I think the real value in this game is the under. I think we're looking at an inflated total. When you look at last year's game when these two teams met, what was funny is TCU was a 7.5-point favorite, and they lost the game by 7. Boise rushed for 77 yards on 32 attempts. TCU rushed for 36 yards on 20 attempts. Neither team was able to run the ball. And even passing, they didn't have too much success. 240, 270. It's not all that much for, you know, these two teams. But TCU had those 3 interceptions, and that was what changed the whole game for them, I think. I think we're going to see more of the same this year. You look at Boise State defense, they're 12th in points allowed, but they're number 5 in passing yards allowed. I think against the pass, they've even improved since last year. You look at TCU, they're 37th in points allowed. So even though we look at Boise as an offensive juggernaut, they really get it done with defense as well. The other thing that scares me is this about Boise. Doug Martin This is why I'm not willing to go against you. Doug Martin's not 100% their running back. 11 touchdowns, 750 yards. He's going to go. He's probable. But he is not 100%. I think you already can't run against TCU. Now you have a running back who's not 100%. That's going to make Kellen Moore and the Boise offense a lot more one-dimensional and easier to prepare for. That's why I really like the under. But this line, this is like a Marco trap game. And I don't believe in traps. You know, I look at numbers, I make my ratings, and I see where they put in the line and if there's value. But this is screaming of trap as far as how Marco looks at it. You have a 7-2 team like TCU who's 4-0 in conference, Boise 3-0 in conference. This is for first place. This is a big game for both teams, especially for Boise, who wants a shot at the BCS championship game. They won't get it, but still they'll have a chance to cry about it if they go undefeated. But you're giving me 2 touchdowns, over 2 touchdowns with TCU? Like, are you going to, why are they doing me a favor? But then I talked to some books, and they're actually getting Boise money. So as far as the side goes, I came in liking Boise. I'm not going to buck you. I'm going to say I like the under in this game. And if anything, you kind of changed my mind a little bit. And I'm going to start leaning towards that TCU side.
All right. You made a good point about the look-aheads last week. The Wyoming situation was interesting because TCU failed to cover against Wyoming by 8 points. They had a -5 turnover disadvantage. So anytime you can lose a turnover battle by 5 and only fail to cover by 8 points, that tells you played a pretty good football game.
Yeah.
And that was in a situation where they definitely had the look ahead. So if you just take a look at the final score, you say, well, they struggled with Wyoming. But in reality, when you take a look at the turnovers, because you would think they would have based on the line, a 1 to a 2 point advantage on turnovers. They were -5, and yet they only failed to cover by 8 points.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a little bit of value there. And I'm just interested, you said you came in looking kind of with the Boise side. What would you come up with the number on this game?
It's right what they brought out.
Okay.
That's why I can't say I'm going to bet it. You know, as far as the number goes, with Boise's home field advantage, which I think you're right, and that's going to make me go back in and do some work. I think I have to lower my home field rating for Boise because I gave them the highest. It's them in Oregon.
Yes, I agree.
You know, as the highest home field advantage in college football, in my opinion. But I think you're right. You know, you have to lower it this year with Boise. And because of that, there's no line value here. I was just thinking on a handicapping side that this game can get out of hand. If TCU finds themselves behind, they could get in trouble quickly.
And to be honest with you, Boise State is a team that needs a blowout win here in order to help themselves in the BCS.
And that's some pressure because they haven't been playing the BCS game.
Yes.
You know, their coach says it. You know, he pulls the starters when they're up.
I give him credit for that.
Yeah, yeah. So TCU, take the points. He's calling it.
All right.
You got something big Saturday?
I'm still working on my card. I've had a lot of success with the MAC this week.
Yeah,
As you know, I've won every week. 5-1 on the season in MAC. I'll take that all the time. I've got to play up right now, and I've got to play up tomorrow's a MAC game. I haven't found anything on Saturday.
You're just killing the weekday games with the MAC.
The thing is, I know it very well.
Yeah.
And these weekday games
offer some because they're primetime games. The numbers aimed at the betting public, not at you.
That's right.
And if you know the conference and the teams as well as you do, you get a big edge. I agree.
You see a lot of advantages in it, and the betting public wants to be involved because these games are on TV. Once they get involved, and they don't
knock the line even more out of whack.
Yeah, I don't want to say they don't know it, but they don't know the MAC like they know the SEC
no,
or the Big Ten or whatever.
Of course.
So that gives us even more of an advantage. And even in the forum, there was a guy the other day that said the line was his line was 10 points off the Temple game, and I said, if your line's 10 points off this far in the season, you got a bad line.
Yeah.
Nothing against him. I don't know him, but. Do you have games 10 points off?
I don't know if I've ever
had a game 10 points off the line.
No.
That was an opening week.
I haven't had any this year, I'll tell you that. And I don't remember having one in a real long time.
That's right. Yeah.
I want to know what you guys think. Go to pregamevideos.com. Should I adjust my Boise home field rating, or is it just they haven't had a reason to light it up? We'll find out. So make sure you go in, check that thread out. All the videos will be up. We're coming right back doing some NFL best bet from me. And he's got an interesting game to cover as well.